Hi, our project is on sustainability and green luxury hotels, and we are group number 3. Our group consists of Anna, Hera, Will, Craig, myself, Lizzie, and Sophia. And to start us off, I'm just going to give us a brief overview of what we're going to be covering for this presentation. I'll start off with the intro, and then we'll go into the 3 different tests that we ran, and we'll end up with some recommendations at the end of our presentation. Yeah, next, sorry. And for this slide, we chose project option number 2, where we were given a data set to analyze that was taken from a survey that was investigating consumers' attitudes towards sustainable practices. To give a background of that industry, the hotel industry is beginning to implement green design and construction practices, saving energy, water, and resources, and thus helping to preserve the environment. The goal of this is to provide luxurious and sustainable accommodations to appeal to the younger, more environmentally conscious hotel guests, while increasing the financial strength of the hotel as well. And then for this, for what we did for the tests, we looked at 5 individual questions from the survey to come up with an overarching hypothesis to apply to the data, and that's what we're going to go into next.
All right, so our research question we chose to analyze is what would influence people's decisions to recommend, and how can we maximize green luxury hotels exposure using these factors? To answer this question, we came up with 3 more questions to test and analyze that help us come to a conclusion for our main research question. Those 3 questions are listed on the slide right here. And then moving on to why this is important on the next slide. So there's a number of reasons why these data questions are important and uncover benefits for luxury hotels in China. The overall goal of our research is to uncover what influences people to recommend green luxury hotels, and then finding out how to maximize profits based off that information. By doing this, we are able to come up with a marketing technique and provide suggestions that not only maximize profits and cut unnecessary spending, but also give the industry a better understanding of what kind of customers can increase their sales through word of mouth recommendations. It's important to know what type of customers are most likely to recommend your company so that you can adjust your marketing goals based off that information. Our goal is to run tests and analyze the data to provide information to luxury green hotels to maximize their exposure to potential clients or customers. So what we needed to know to run our analysis. So to answer these research questions and start collecting data, we needed to start with some background information. So we used the existing data from the provided appendix and used the 5 following factors listed on the slide. And we ran tests and analyzed our results with those 5 listed there. We carefully chose this data to analyze because it provides us with the most information to answer each of our research questions. We took into account the demographics such as age, gender, education, and income. Being able to compare the demographics of each different customer and see if there is any correlation or significance between them helps us better understand what groups to market to and what type of people are most likely going to recommend a green hotel. Hera is now going to explain the process of our data analysis.
Our methods analysis focus on correlation between the interested dependent variables and the independent variables. We first average the subparts of the questions we are interested in because it adds more weight and help us to obtain more accurate measure of the participants' attitude towards a certain topic. Then the next step of our method is to transform our age variable into a useful type of variable to use in our analysis. We decided to use regression analysis to determine the correlation between our interested DV and IV. We will be looking at 3 numbers in analysis: R-squared, regression significance, and coefficient significance. R-squared tells us whether there is a strong relationship between the variables and whether the correlation is negative or positive. Regression significance will tell us if there's any correlations between the two variables by testing our R-squared significance. Lastly, we'll be looking at the coefficient significance of the independent variable to see if it is an important predictor of our regression. And the process of doing the analysis is that step one, we set up our null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Step two, we used the compute variable tool on SPSS to find the average rating for each question we chose to include in our analysis. Step three, we used the create regression bar on SPSS to create a linear regression analysis containing the defined DV and IV. Step four, we then analyze and interpret the results of our regression analysis.
So the first question that we were answering with our regression analysis was, is there a relationship between the supportive sustainability of participants and their level of urge to social signal their support? So our null hypothesis is there is no correlation between the average status signaling measure and sustainability measure of participants. And then our alternative hypothesis is there is a correlation between the average status signaling measure and sustainability measure of participants. In order to find a relationship between participants who stay at a green luxury hotel with the intention of signaling their social status and participants who stay at a green luxury hotel with the intention of supporting sustainability practices, we ran a linear regression analysis. Shown by the figure to the right, our model is significant with a p-value of less than 0.001. Since our significant value is less than 0.05, we can confidently reject the null hypothesis and accept the alternative hypothesis. In other words, there is a correlation between those who stay at a green luxury hotel with the intention of signaling their social status and participants who stay at a green luxury hotel to support sustainability. Given that the R-squared value is 0.053, the relationship between our independent variable is not strongly correlated. Therefore, we can conclude that although there is a relationship between the average status signaling measure and sustainability measure of participants, given our significant value, this relationship is very weak. Overall, our findings from the correlation analysis helped us uncover that there is a relationship between the support for sustainability from participants and their level of urge to social signal their support. Although there is a positive relationship between these two variables, the R-squared value indicates that the average status signaling measure does not deeply affect the sustainability measure of participants, indicating a weak relationship.
Our second research analysis was if there is a correlation between the demographic factors and the likelihood to recommend green luxury hotels to others. If so, which one has an impact? In order to find a relationship between the demographic aspects of our target audience and their level of recommendation, we ran a linear regression analysis. As shown in the table, the demographic information of the customers does not deeply affect their level of recommendation, so it is not a very important factor explaining our DV, that is the recommendation. According to the R-squared, that is 0.067. But it is true, as we can see in the data, that among all the demographic variables, both gender and age are the ones that are significant, with a significant parameter 0.047 and 0.002 respectively. In this way, we reject income and education as relevant variables to take into account in order to explain the recommendation of a customer because of their significant value of 0.379 for income and 0.896 for education. From this, we can conclude that when you need increase in the age of customers leads to a 0.026 units of recommendation of increase in recommendation, which means that the older you are, the more likely you are to recommend the place positively. Additionally, we can say that in gender, being 0 female and 1 male, that we have converted these variables into dummy variables because they are nominal data. And we have female as a baseline. The difference between the recommendation between males and females is that male recommend minus 0.211 compared to females. And this data explain that females are more likely to recommend than males. In order to determine which demographic variable is more significant, we look at the t-values and comparing the absolute values of both of the variables, we conclude that age is a more important variable predicting the recommendation than gender. And then talking about our third research question, that is if are individuals who tend to conform to groups more likely to recommend staying at a green luxury hotel to others. I'm focusing between the peer association that we said that is the importance of being surrounded by people their own age and the level recommendation of the customers of green luxury hotels. To see if there is a relation between these variables, we ran a new regression analysis. As you can see in the table, the peer associative information is more important explaining the recommendation of the customers than the demographic factors. We can see that in the R-square, that is 0.202, which is higher than the previous analysis, that it was 0.067. We can also observe from the data that the importance of having similar taste, of being surrounded by people the same age as the customers, is a significant parameter in our regression analysis, rejecting in this way our new hypothesis that was that there was not a correlation between peer association and of the target and the recommendation intentions. This means that the variable is an important factor in predicting if customers are going to recommend or not. Of this analysis, we can conclude that a unit of increase in the peer associations leads to a 0.384 units of increase in recommendation. So we can conclude that the people that care more of being surrounded by other people with the same interests and that look like their own age are also the ones that recommend the most the green luxury hotels.
To further analyze the importance of conformity measure, we averaged the A, B, and C part of the question 6, the interdependence self-construct measure, and question 7, the peer associative measure. We then ran a regression analysis on the average of conformity and the average of recommendation intention. The results indicates that the R-squared is 0.231 and it shows a weak positive relationship between the two variables. We then moved on to see if the regression is significant. Our null hypothesis is that R-squared is 0, indicating that there is no relationship between the dependent and independent variable. The alternative hypothesis is that the R-squared does not equal 0, showing that there is some relationship between the two variables. The significance value 0.001 is less than 0.05, thus we reject the null hypothesis. And by rejecting the null hypothesis, we can conclude that the regression shows R-squared is statistically different than 0, meaning that there is a relationship between the recommendation intentions and the level of conformity in society. Lastly, we set up the null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis for coefficient significance. Since the t-value 0.001 is less than 0.05, we reject the null hypothesis and we can conclude that the levels of conformity is a significant predictor of this regression. We can also conclude that each unit increase in conformity level leads to 0.454 units of increase in the likelihood to recommend green luxury hotels to others.
So there are some disadvantages that come along with having a limited secondaries data set. Our data set is limited in the amount of respondents that we have, and this demonstrates that the quality and accuracy may pose a problem while doing the analysis. Furthermore, we don't know if there are any sample biases, and lastly, we don't know when the data was collected. It could either be cross-sectional, meaning it was collected at one point in time, or panel data, meaning it was observed across time or over different occasions. Some follow-up research that would address our secondary research issues would be sending out our own questionnaires to further understand why certain consumer behavior occurs. This will allow us to directly address the problem and our primary research questions. Additionally, our data sources will be known and current, and we will be able to have full control on the data collection. In conclusion, after extensively analyzing the survey research provided to us regarding luxury green hotels, we were able to further understand consumer preferences and attitudes in China. Overall, there is a definitely significance between our research questions and their correspondence to green luxury hotels. Status signaling measure, age, gender, and peer association have proven to be important factors regarding different elements of luxury green hotels. Companies should care about this because it is important to understand the underlying behavior of consumers when it comes to sustainability.
After analyzing the existing data set that has been provided for us, we have come up with some recommendations for green luxury hotel managers and suggestions for them to increase the exposure of their hotels. Based on the data that we collected, we concluded that the older you are, the more likely you are to recommend green luxury hotels to others. In addition, females are more likely to recommend green luxury hotels than males. And people that care about being surrounded by other people with the same interests are more likely to recommend green luxury hotels. Therefore, with this information, managers should focus their marketing efforts on targeting older females that care about being surrounded by other people with the same interests. In doing so, this customer profile will not only be the most profitable for green luxury hotels, but by targeting their marketing efforts towards this customer persona, it will boost green luxury hotel exposure to the masses. Thank you.